Hi, this episode of the Comics Alternative, one of the most insightful and intelligent comic podcasts out there, is brought to you in part with the support of Patreon pledges from listeners like me, Sal Good Sam. Patreon is a crowdfunding platform that helps content providers generate some income for content they often give away for free, like this show. As a comic artist, I use it myself. It's been a huge help in making ends meet, and I'm super pleased to be able to pass some of that on via my own pledges to a number of other creators like Derek and Andy, so they too can enrich our cultural landscape. Become a patron of the arts and letters. Pledge today at patreon.com/comicsalternative.
This is The Comics Alternative, episode 156, a look at the October Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the beginning of the month, so that must mean it's time to look at the current month's previews catalog. But before we get into that, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you will find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you're going to find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off cover price, and every single month you're going to find some unbelievable specials, and October is no exception. Sometimes you'll see that those specials are at 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off cover price, but often you'll find discounts that are quite a bit more impressive than that.
That's right, and as usual, they have a load of bundles to take advantage of where you get a deeper discount on multiple comics from the same publisher than you would get if you ordered those comics individually. And this month they have several bundles from Marvel, DC, Valiant, including 2 Vertigo bundles. They're continuing to offer the new number 1 issues from Vertigo for 75% off, and then the recent series that have started from Vertigo in the last couple months, you can buy all 8 of those comics for 50% off. So quite a few bundles to take advantage of.
Yowza. Great discounts. They have that every month. You have to go to their website to check out what specifically the October specials are. That's dcbservice.com. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs, as both Andy and I do. And after you do get your comics there, drop them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
You know, Andy, at the very top of the show, before we actually got into the episode ID, we heard an endorsement from someone who we've had on the show before, Sal Good Sam. He's one of our Patreon supporters, and listeners will know that over the past couple of months, we've been every now and again running brief endorsements from our Patreon supporters, telling them to help out on Patreon just as we do. And, Sam said, or Sal Good Sam said some really interesting things. And so I want to thank him for that wonderful endorsement. But also, I think we should point out that Max, the real name of Sal Good Sam, has his own Patreon campaign, and that's going really well. So if you want to check out www.patreon.com/Salgood, that's SALGOOD, you'll see that he has his own campaign going for his own publishing arm, which he calls Spelt Ink. And, we discussed this last year when we had him on the show. And right now he's in phase 1 of his Patreon campaign, and it's well worth supporting. So check him out. That's www.patreon.com/Salgood and become a Patreon supporter of his. So if you support us, you'll definitely like the stuff that Sal Good Sam is doing.
That's right.
Andy, how have things been going with you, my friend?
Well, as some of our listeners may know, I live in South Carolina, and as we're recording this, we are just kind of coming out of some historic flooding that has taken place in the area I live in. But I'm glad to say I'm okay. We had a dicey day on Sunday where the water on our street got pretty deep. And my wife and I were driving home. We were actually in Chicago over the weekend, and we had to abandon our car a few blocks from home and hoof it through knee-deep water. So that wasn't fun. But on the plus side, my school's been canceled for today and tomorrow, so I get a little vacation. And I have no idea what the state of my office is like. Sumter, South Carolina, where I teach, got hit even worse than I did in Florence, South Carolina. So I may not have an office to go back to. We'll see how that goes. Yep.
That must have been jarring coming back from your out-of-town trip to Chicago and then seeing how flooded things were. Because I'm sure you heard about it on the news. You just didn't know how bad it was in your neighborhood.
Well, yeah, we had neighbors actually who were kind of nice neighbors keeping an eye on things for us, and so they were sending us pictures of the street as the water rose. So we did know that we were coming home to something that was progressively getting worse, but we didn't really know what it was until we got here. Yep.
Wow.
But I did have a good time in Chicago. Was at a family wedding, but I managed to get a chance on Friday night to hang out with Gene Cannonberg, one of the other guys with PhDs who talks about comics, and so we had a fun late night conversation. We took a look at our watches and realized it was past 1 o'clock in the morning, and we hadn't even realized that. So
that's a sign of a great conversation.
It is, and most of it was about you. So there you go.
In a negative way? Not that I'm paranoid.
I'm just kidding.
It
was all about comics.
Us comics. So now you've met with Gene at least twice, correct?
Yeah.
At various outings.
Gene and I met, I think, only one other time, and that was at
It's Ohio?
At Ohio State for the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum opening.
Right. And that wasn't that long after he started to co-host on a regular basis.
Right.
Or to fill in on a semi-regular basis. And I've had him on the show innumerable times as a co-host, but I've yet to meet him in person. So, he could be some kind of false construct, unless I believe you.
Yeah. So there's several of us have been involved in an elaborate gaslighting scheme of you. There actually aren't other than Andy Wolverton, there aren't any other co-hosts.
Well, actually, I do know Shay. I do know Gwen.
Yes, you do.
But
have you seen her lately?
That's a good point. Last time I saw her was probably 4 years ago.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm starting to wonder. But I'm glad you had a good time with Gene in Chicago. You've had an eye opener back at home, but the important thing is you're dry.
Yeah, I am, and so let's see how this episode goes, and if it started to rain again, so if we hang on to our electricity and so on, and we don't float away, we can get this episode done.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and start talking about the October issue of previews then.
Okay.
And we start, as we usually do, in Dark Horse, going from the beginning, working our way back through the comic section. What is the first thing you have in Dark Horse, if anything?
I start on page 38.
I do too. So go ahead.
Okay. So, that page 38 is The Return of the Massive. a new 6-issue miniseries by Brian Wood and Gary Brown called The Massive Ninth Wave. And the original Massive series, do you remember how many issues that went?
Oh, I can't remember. And I didn't read it all the way through, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I think it's 5 volumes, so maybe about 30 issues, I'm guessing.
That sounds about right.
Right, and so here's another 6-issue miniseries, and I'm wondering, this is making me wonder if the Massive is going to run as a series of miniseries, kind of the way other Dark Horse properties have worked in the past, like Hellboy.
It'd be interesting to hear some interviews with Brian Wood and or Gary Brown just to get a sense of the reason for coming out with the Massive Ninth Wave 6-issue limited series, to see if this is something that, part of, as you suggest, the possibility, a series of miniseries, or if they just wanted one last dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is going to be a series of... Each issue is going to be a done-in-one story for the 6-issue series, so that's interesting. So it's not going to be a kind of fine... a kind of massive reunion series of not just the original creative team, but of the characters as well, but instead being a series of short stories.
Well, maybe this is a way for them to kind of flesh out their narrative world a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that facing page is something I wanted to point out, that with Pastaways, and we reviewed the first issue of Pastaways a number of months ago, but the next issue, number 9, is the final.
That's right.
Had you heard that Pastaways was ending?
No, but, that seems to be the case with a lot of these new series that Dark Horse has started, that they don't have a long life to them. But that's disappointing about Pastaways, because I was enjoying that series.
Yeah, I was too. And it's not only a Dark Horse thing, because later, as we get into, let's say, the Image section, there's at least one title that I wanted to mention something similar. I didn't know that it was ending. Apparently it is. It's sooner than I expected, but we'll get there eventually. That's unfortunate. But, I know that, for a variety of different reasons, creators aren't able to continue a particular series. And so what may have started out seeming as an ongoing turns out to be a limited.
Well, I get the sense with the Dark Horse books like this that this is a cancellation and not a natural end for this series.
Yeah. Well, we were talking not too long ago about the fact that some of the Dark Horse series were suspending publication in print and then going to web or going to digital.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're not even doing that anymore.
No. So, if we turn the page to 40. This is a new title that looks interesting. Paul Tobin and Alberto Albuquerque's Mystery Girl.
Yeah, I had that marked too.
Yeah. The solicit is, Trina Hampstead knows everything. Ask her a question like, where are my keys? Or is he cheating on me? Or how are there perfectly preserved mammoths in recent ice? And she just knows. She's the mystery girl. The only thing Trina doesn't know is how she knows, or anything else from the last 10 years of her life. So it's an interesting premise, and Albuquerque's art, and there's one-page sample art, looks attractive as well.
Yeah, and I like what Paul Tobin does, and so I'm definitely interested in checking that out. And that is listed as a mini series, though it does not say how many issues it is. So see how that goes.
Yeah. And to get a sense of what this is like, they're saying for fans of Marvel Girl and iZombie. So this may give us some sense of what their intended audience is. Do you have anything else, or where do you go next in Dark Horse?
To page 47.
Okay.
And Page 47 has on it Dark Horse is putting out a collection of David Chelsea's 24-hour comics, or the second volume of them, Sleepless and Other Stories. And I really like David Chelsea's 24-hour comics. I first read them in an earlier collection that was titled 24 by 2 that I think Top Shelf put out, or maybe Fantagraphics. One of those two. And so while these are part of the whole 24-hour comic phenomenon where, one day a year creators who decide to participate have to create from scratch a 24-page comic in 24 hours. David Chelsea's 24-hour comics are look like they were done in a much longer time than 24 hours. They're really interesting, improvised exercises. David Chelsea may probably be best known for his autobiographical series, David Chelsea in Love, which was a long time ago now, maybe 25 years ago. But he still continues to put out these 24-hour comics.
So when was the first volume of his 24-hour comics put out?
I'm really not sure what they're counting as his first volume. If it is actually maybe if it is 24 by 2, which is just a floppy. It's the first two that he did.
Okay.
But I'm not really clear on that.
Well, this is a hardcover.
Yes, and these may not. So those two stories may not be in here.
Okay. I go next on the following page, 48.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there are two things on page 48, one of which we've looked at before. Evan Dorkin's The Eltingville Club hardcover is being resolicited, and we knew that it had been solicited and it was canceled, and that, at least I learned through DCB service, that it would be resolicited. So It's good to see that this is back, and right now the pub date on this is early February. So I still want to get Evan Dorkin on the show to talk with him about this and other titles.
Yep.
But another thing I'm very glad to see coming out is Peter Bagg's Founding Fathers Funnies.
Yep.
And this is a hardcover coming out in late February. 80 pages, so there's not a lot there, but this is something that Bagg has been doing for a number of years now. And with his Founding Father Funnies, sometimes he will release an installment in Dark Horse Presents. Sometimes he'll include it at the tail end, almost as an extra in one of the titles that he's put out. But this is the first time that the Founding Father Funnies will be put together as one package. And I know I've spoken with him, a couple of times for the podcast, and also interviewed him for the blog. And so this is something that he's been wanting to come out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you do have, as the title suggests, the founding fathers of, the American Revolution. And it does have a lot to do with American history, American politics, but also, as the title suggests, there's very much a humorous edge to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can just imagine what Peter Bagg's approach to U.S. history is going to be.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yep. The last place I go in Dark Horse is page 61. So I don't know if you have anything before that.
I had marked that, and I have one other thing, but yeah, go ahead. The same thing I'm sure I marked.
Is it the Spirit New Adventures collection?
Yeah, the second edition.
Yeah, and so this is the collection of the series that Kitchen Sink did of in 1997 of new Spirit stories. I think there were 6 issues, maybe 7. I can't remember. I have all of them. But the thing I wanted to mention about this is that not only is it the second edition, but it's about half the price of what the first edition was. If you had got this when it originally came out, it was about $50. Mm-hmm. So now it's $24.99. And still in hardcover, and it's still designed to look like it belongs with the Spirit Archive collection that DC put out, even, so with the same trade dress and design and so on, and even with the number 27, volume 27 on the cover, so it comes right after the 26 or last volume of the DC collections.
Did you get that first edition?
No, because I already have all the comics.
Oh, okay.
But I might, for $24.99, I might go ahead and get it and stick it in with my my other Will Eisner archives.
Yeah, and in fact, this second edition is going to include new material. It says features a previously unpublished story, and then as well as Will Eisner's sketches. So I don't know if this is like new to the Dark Horse kitchen sink, or if this is new to the second edition. But it's a better price, and actually it is fairly uniform, not completely uniform, with DC's Spirit Archives.
Okay.
If you look at the spine, it's a little different, but it's not that noticeable.
Okay.
But it's interesting that they're releasing that when they are again getting into the spirit of the Spirit, which we've seen a lot of this year. The only other thing I have in Dark Horse is on page 63, and I'll just mention this in passing, but this is the third omnibus of E.G. Otsuka's The Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service.
Yep.
And Shay and I discussed the first volume of the omnibus on the latest manga show, which went up last week. And I really like the series. If you're not familiar with this, then I think that the omnibus editions are ways to go. And Dark Horse has been doing a lot of this, taking their individual volumes of the manga that they have been putting out as the American publisher and collecting them in omnibus editions.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check it out if you're not familiar with that title.
Yep.
So now we turn to the DC/Vertigo part of the catalog.
Yeah, and as usual, over the last 3 months, they're kicking off 4 new series, or in this case, it is 3 miniseries and 1 ongoing series. So, The Sheriff of Babylon by Tom King and Mitch Gerads, New Romancer by Peter Milligan and Brett Parsons, Last Gang in Town by Simon Oliver and Rufus Dayglow, and then the ongoing series is a relaunch of Lucifer by Holly Black and Lee Garbett. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't clear completely from the original announcements that these others were going to be miniseries.
I didn't know that for certain either, but it's clearer here in the catalog, because in the solicits you find that, let's say with the Sheriff of Babylon, it's 1 of 8. With the Last Gang in Town, it's 1 of 7, and then with New Romancer, 1 of 12. I find it interesting, though, that Lucifer, of these 4, is the ongoing, at least for now, because I wonder what kind of reception Lucifer will get. And I'd be curious to know the people who pick up Lucifer, if they're going to be the same who read the original, going all the way back to his beginnings in Sandman, or if they're primarily going to be getting a brand new readership who may have heard of Sandman, maybe dipped in a little bit, but are completely unfamiliar with, if not the character of Lucifer, then that series that Mike Carey wrote.
Right. Well, I wonder if because the impetus for this is that NBC is going to be, or is it, no, Fox is going to be launching, Fox or NBC? Maybe NBC. It's going to be launching a new Lucifer TV series. And so they're, the audience they may be looking at is possibly a crossover between those who are previous fans of Lucifer, but those who are going to come to it fresh from the TV series. Though, so we'll see what happens there. But that's also obviously building on Vertigo's already having had their success with the iZombie TV series.
Yeah, a success with that, not so much with Constantine.
Right.
Which is unfortunate. Now, Constantine was on
NBC.
NBC, okay. So it may be NBC that's doing Lucifer?
I can't remember now. Probably somebody will figure it out. I could probably look real quick, but I don't really feel like it.
Nah, that's okay.
But most of the other series that had already previously launched in the 2 months prior are ongoing series. Only Jacked and Twilight Children are miniseries. And we knew from the beginning that Twilight Children was going to be a miniseries.
Right. Well, they're launched as ongoing. Let's see how long they stick around.
Right, exactly.
Not to be negative, but as we were talking about earlier, sometimes even the really good titles don't stick around for long.
That's right.
Is one of those four something that stands out atop the others for you?
Well, I like Peter Milligan, so I'm looking forward to New Romancer. I don't remember if that was the original title or not. If that title's changed since the original announcement either, but I'm not sure. Actually, these four, I'm looking forward to all four of them. I like Tom King's work on Grayson and Omega Men, so I'm curious about the Sheriff of Babylon, and Mitch Gerads does good, military style stories with The Activity. That one I think has a lot of potential, and I like Simon Oliver's work on FBP, and Rufus Daiglow's art is fun.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm looking forward to all of these, and you and I have talked about doing another Vertigo Spotlight that, maybe in December, perhaps in January, whenever the 12 new titles, after they get at least one issue out, we can do a show devoted to the new Vertigo titles, which is what we did a couple of years ago with their new titles at the time.
Right.
So I'd like to do something similar. Do you have anything else in DC Vertigo?
No.
Yeah. I just want to point out on page 134, we have the next volume of Hellblazer that, as we've discussed on the show a few times before, DC Vertigo is going back and now putting into uniform volumes, trade paperbacks, all the Hellblazer, which I'm glad of. And so this is the next one, Volume 12, How to Play with Fire. And they're also coming out with a deluxe edition, this is on the same page, of Grant Morrison's Kill Your Boyfriend and Vimanorama, which, I was about to say, an interesting combination. It makes sense, though, in that I think that these are both very short narratives from Morrison that don't get a lot of attention, so combining them into one deluxe volume, I guess that makes sense.
And they're both collaborations with Philip Bond.
Yeah, so that's another reason why. But, in other words, instead of coming out with another edition of Kill Your Boyfriend, because that's already been collected, or another collection of Vimanorama, put them together, yeah.
And that Hellblazer collection, by the way, concludes Paul Jenkins's previously uncollected run, and has the 6 issues Son of Man story that Garth Ennis did when he returned to the series for a brief time, and so that means Volume 13 is going to have Warren Ellis's truncated run. And so I'm wondering if they're going to include Shoot in there, the issue that was pulped and then later printed, but the pulping of that issue resulted in Warren Ellis cutting his his time on the series short. But if they did put Shoot in there, I think that ends up making it about 11 issues. So then that's how many they usually put in each volume. So.
Yeah. Well, I know a number of these Hellblazer new volumes are kind of hefty, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they usually go 10 to 12 issues in those.
So I like them.
Yep.
And that's all I have in DC Vertigo.
Yeah. And then we go to IDW.
Yeah. What do you have marked on your wish list?
153.
Yep. Mark Guggenheim and Dave Bullock's The Rocketeer at War. That's a 4-issue miniseries. The first issue of that is going to be coming out in December. I was trying to think. It's been 2 years since we had the last Rocketeer miniseries.
Okay.
Wasn't it? Because that was the one that had the Rocketeer Spirit team up, right?
I guess, yeah. So there was, that one came after Hollywood Horror, which was the previous solo Rocketeer series.
Right. We even did a show looking at a lot of the Rocketeer stuff.
Yeah.
Both we've discussed the older, the original, of course, and then some of the newer. And I think that first issue, if I'm not mistaken, it was that first issue of the Spirit Rocketeer had just come out, so we included that in the discussion as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think Dave Bullock is one of those artists that works well with this sort of a nostalgic material. So,
yeah.
I'll see.
And
I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, and from what appears to be the cover of the first issue, he does a really good Betty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's a priority for you.
It is. It is, in all seriousness. What else do you have in IDW?
I go to 169. I don't know if you have anything before that.
No, 169.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to mention that Tom Zoller, the creator of Love and Capes, has a graphic novel called Long Distance solicited here. I think this is an OGN, or is this a collection of a miniseries?
No, this is a miniseries which wrapped up about, I think, a month ago, and I'm almost positive that in a previous preview show we mentioned that first issue that was solicited. I think it was maybe a 4-issue miniseries.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just forgetting. I'm blanking on it, and since it doesn't say that it is a collection, I was wondering what the origin of that was, but you're right. And so and again, as I said that time too, I like how Tom Zoller does romantic comedy. Mm-hmm. So, and this is about a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
And so there you go.
And I've heard really good things about it. I had intended to pick up at least the first issue and read it, but I never got around to it. And I think that wasn't Zoller at Heroes Con?
He is every year, yeah.
Okay. And I remember, I think this was soon after that first issue came out, and I remember at the time regretting the fact that I didn't have that first issue, but I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So from all the good things I've heard about this, and from the work he's done on Love and Cape, this is definitely something that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe possibly reviewing it on a future show.
Possibly. And then I go to 175 to Yo Books.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything before that.
No, just mention something in passing that on page 173 is the slipcase collected Essex County coming from IDW Top Shelf.
Yep.
Okay. Then, Yo Books.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go wrong with Yo.
Yeah, as we usually say. And so there's only 2 things listed for Yo Books, I think, this month. And that is the usual issue of Haunted Horror, which is up to number 20 now, but a collection of another collection for the chilling archives of horror comics, Devil Tales, which is, I guess, a thematic collection.
I would guess so.
Yeah, there's not a series called Devil Tales that this is collecting, but instead a collection of stories about Satan himself.
Right. And they've done these themed collections before for the Chilling Archive series.
And this one's edited by Steve Baines, Mr. Carswell himself, and has art by Don Heck, Gene Colan, Dick Ayers, Lou Cameron, Bob Powell, Howard Nostrand, who they've and more, and they've already dedicated books to Don Heck, Bob Powell, and Howard Nostrand, right?
The Heck one is coming out later this year.
Right, but they've done the other. They have collections with those three artists.
Right. Yeah. So this is something. It seems like for the past 3 months in the IDW section, there are substantive solicits like books from Yo Books, not just the the romance or the haunted horror collections or the serials. But so this is good, and we want to have Craig on the show within the next few months to talk about these new releases.
Yep.
That's all I have in IDW. Do you have anything else?
Nope, me too. We can jump to Image.
Well, I'm sure that both of us are going to be starting at the same place in Image on page
180.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, were you surprised to see this?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while now since this was announced, but, we had Brian Vaughn on the show, and he said there weren't plans to collect The Private Eye at that time, right?
Right.
And so, but
that was early this year.
Yeah. And so now it is getting collected, which is good. I think it deserves to see print. And so, that, and I get the sense that part of it is related to Brian K. Vaughan doing more work for Image as well with We Stand on Guard and Paper Girls.
Yes. Yeah, it just makes sense that Image would be the one to put this out. I first found out about this a while back, and I was looking for something on Amazon. I can't remember what it was. So I didn't see any formal announcement or anything or news releases, but I saw that this was listed on Amazon, which threw me for a second. It surprised me, but it didn't surprise me. It surprised me because, before we interviewed Brian K. Vaughan earlier this year, I had heard that in various interviews and whatnot, or at least through the grapevine, he would, emphatically say, no, there is not going to be a hardbound edition of this. We're not going to come out in print. It's the digital. That's why we're doing. That's what we're doing. That was the essence of the project. And then when we asked him during the interview for the show, he said no, but I didn't feel that it was an emphatic no. And so I wondered, well, if something might be up, and who knows what was going on at that time, early back in January. But now we have it. It's a reality, or it's about to become a reality.
Right.
I'm glad as well. So this is going to be a new hardbound. It says the Cloudburst edition. And it says, years after the digital cloud bursts, it exposes all of our secrets. And so I guess that's where they get that name from. But the format is kind of a long horizontal format, which will basically showcase the way that the art was originally intended. So they're not playing around with the panel arrangements.
Yeah, that's good. I'm be curious to see. I'm guessing this is going to be a beautiful looking book.
Yeah. And then Marcos Martin's art is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Although it is a rather hefty price.
Yeah, $50.
$50, but it is a little over 300 pages. So, but it's just in time for the holidays. So if you don't want to pay $49.99, or even with DCB Services discount, which I don't know what it is, did you happen to notice when you were on their website?
No. I probably did, but I skipped over it.
But even if you don't want to pay the discounted price, maybe you could have a friend, family member, loved one get it for you for Christmas.
Yeah.
Because that's when the first hardbound deluxe edition of Saga came out, is right before the holidays.
Well, we'll see. It is, yes, it's 50% off. So $24.99 is a great deal on that.
So buy for yourself.
Yep.
And if you do get it through DCB service, which I hope that you will, tell them the two guys with PhDs sent you.
Of course.
Had to get that in.
Yep. Let's see, where am I next?
Yeah. As usual with Image, we have a number of number ones.
Well, I jumped to 194 with the next thing I was going to comment on. So if you have something before then, go ahead.
I've marked a couple things, like, for instance, Black Jack Ketchum seems interesting. I'll probably check out Matt Hawkins's Symmetry. I don't know how strongly I feel about those two titles. Black Jack Ketchum does seem a little more interesting because it's a Western, or it's a take on Western. It says it's a dreamlike version of the Old West.
Right.
Tom Ketchum struggles to clear his name and stay alive when he's mistaken for wanton outlaw Black Jack Ketchum. With the aid of his talking sidearm, okay, interesting, a secretive gambler, and a mute girl with a Winchester, okay, interesting as well, Tom evades the mysterious Union and its supernatural enforcers, the Faceless Dusters, as he's forced to question his identity, his sanity, and his very existence. So, that's a pretty darn good solicit.
Yeah, I'm curious about that book too. I didn't mark it as something to talk about in a show, but yeah.
So this is the story by Brian Shermer and art by Claudia Balboni and Kelly Fitzpatrick.
Right.
So I'd like to check that out.
Yep.
But you go to 194, right?
Yes, I do. Though before 194, just really quick, that on 192 we're finally going to get the last issue of Where's Jake Ellis, allegedly.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw in that allegedly. And, I know that people have things going on. I'm not holding it against Nathan Edmondson.
But apparently there are things to hold against Nathan Edmondson.
Okay, well,
won't go there.
Don't go there. In fact, that's probably the second, maybe third time that was a don't go there moment with Edmondson on this podcast. I think once was at an on-location show.
Okay.
Where some of the people that collected were about to chime in.
Well, yeah. So I go to 194. So the one of the number ones that I've marked is The Violent number 1 by Ed Brisson and Adam Gorham, and this is an ongoing series. The solicit says, meet Mason, an ex-con and former drug addict who's trying hard to give up his old life. He's got more important things to live for now, a wife struggling to contain her own addiction and a young daughter who needs them both. When threatened with losing his daughter, Mason falls into old habits, stumbling through a string of desperate criminal acts whose repercussions quickly become deadly serious. That solicit is a pretty straightforward noir plot.
Right.
But Ed Brisson has done a lot of good work in that genre so far, with especially with his Image books, and so I will check that out.
That's right. And I think he did a really good job with Sheltered.
Yeah.
And then, very much like Sheltered, from the solicit of The Violent, it seems like a pretty straightforward, realistic narrative,
Yes.
which is, it's becoming something that I don't notice often. It may be there more frequently than I'm noticing, but I don't see it as often or notice it as often in Image, in that many of their titles, kind of like the Western that I had pointed out, Blackjack Ketchum, they begin from a premise that seems to be based in reality, but then there's some kind of either fantastic or science fiction or supernatural twist to them.
Right.
And those are great titles. Don't get me wrong. It's just it's not. It's a little refreshing to see, at least from this solicit, that Brisson and Adam Gorham, they're going to start off with, something that could reflect real life as we know it.
Yep.
And that's it. No twist.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 1, 2, 3 pages of Gorham's art.
Yes. And it looks nice. Gorham's art, I've liked it before, and it has a quality that reminds me of other artists who are working in that kind of noir format as well. Kind of a little Michael Lark and Sean Phillips quality to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two of the masters of noir comics.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that one as well. I have something I wanted to mention briefly on 200. I don't know if you have anything before that.
I'm done with Vimage, I think. So go ahead.
And this is something that I alluded to earlier when we were back in Dark Horse. Stand on Guard, issue number 6, is the final issue.
Right.
Of Stand on Guard. We Stand on Guard.
We Stand on Guard, yeah.
Yeah. So, at what point did this turn into a miniseries?
Yeah.
Did I miss something?
Right. Well, the same thing happens a couple pages later with the Fade Out, right? Was the Fade Out always going to be 12 issues?
No. I mean, I'm glad you pointed. I'd forgotten about that because that's another one that now we know has an endpoint. And I'd assumed that was going to be ongoing. If there was an announcement that it was limited at any point, let's say maybe even just a few months ago, I didn't get the the memo.
Right. So, yeah, I that seems to be. I mean, we've mentioned this before. That seems to be a new policy with Image, is to not announce that a series is a miniseries until later on in it. And so we'll see what other things end up being miniseries as well.
Yeah, and I've heard people speculate almost in a cynical way, although I don't blame the cynicism, is that they don't mention that something is or isn't a miniseries because they're afraid that if it were a miniseries, that maybe not so much that readers wouldn't get it, but retailers would be less apt to stock it.
Sure.
So, and if that's the case, I guess I can understand why they don't announce things in more clarity. But for readers, I don't know. If something's intended to be a miniseries, I'd like for you to tell me up front or as soon as you could.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The only other thing I planned on mentioning in the Image section is page 223. Not only are we supposed to get the last issue of Where is Jake Ellis, but we're also supposed to get the trade Where is Jake Ellis.
Yeah, which I had pre-ordered years ago.
Honestly, I think that I did, but I cannot remember for the life of me if I did.
Well, I eventually just had DCB Service cancel the order, and they agreed that they don't normally do that, but they will do that for something that has not only not been has been solicited for more than a year, but that I think the third issue of the series had come out by that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for me for Image, and I go into the back of the catalog, I guess.
Yeah. After you get past the premier publishers, we get to the smaller ones, what some people call the back half of the catalog.
Where do you start?
What is this? I guess it's on page 245. This is Aftershock Comics. This is a new publishing endeavor. Do you have anything before that?
No, that's where I started too.
Yeah. Had you heard about this?
No, and it's coming from Mike Martz, is the editor-in-chief who'd previously been editor at both DC and Marvel.
So apparently he's, striking a course on his own.
Mm-hmm. Or under the auspices of somebody else, because this could very well be, a publishing venture to bring about, new properties for exploitation elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you've mentioned a few times on the show, today being just one instance of DC Vertigo having their eye on television as a way of determining, what they will put out and what has potential viability. And I'm noticing that a number of creators of the 4 titles that they're soliciting here at the outset with Aftershock, have done quite a bit of work with DC Vertigo.
Not only that, but they've done quite a bit work even more recently with Boom, and Paul Jenkins, and who am I looking at? And Garth Ennis in particular, or Boom or Dynamite. Boom. I don't remember. Anyway, these look like books that could go from either one of those publishers.
Yeah. Although, excuse me, the Ennis title, Dreaming Eagles, this is like something that he's doing with Avatar.
Yeah, but he did those war comics with other publishers as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, this is definitely right up his alley.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Are there any one of these titles that stands out to you?
I mean, that one might, and I might check out Replica, the Paul Jenkins and Andy Clark book, but I'm not sure. And then there's Insects, Insexts, by Marguerite Bennett and Ariella Christentina, a Victorian age tale of love, lust, and magic, the likes of which you've never seen before. That makes me wonder. It makes me think of that title, and the fact that it's set in the Victorian age reminds me of A.S. Byatt's novella Angels and Insects, which is also set in the Victorian era and deals with insects and incest. And this is Insects with an S-E-X in the middle.
Right.
We'll see what that is. And then Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti, and Rafael De La Torre do Sub-Zero, which is a superhero
Yeah, and in
comic.
fact, if you read the solicit for Sub-Zero, it seems like it's something that for Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti makes sense with what they're doing with Harley Quinn, because they have over the past couple of years, created almost a rabid fan base with Harley Quinn, and so they have been playing on that success in different ways. I'm not suggesting that they keep doing the same thing over and over. I mean, they do this well, and so it resonated. So why not see what you can do with it in unique ways? And so this may be one of those attempts.
Right. Exactly.
So, well, this is interesting. We'll see where Aftershock goes. I've been impressed over the past year or so with new publishing ventures that are coming out. There's this one. There was Black Mask from a while back, which seems to be going very strong right now. And then, just about a month or two ago, we had the not something brand new, but I guess a new incarnation of Devil's Due and First.
Yeah.
So, where do you go next?
I go to Alternative Comics on page 254.
Yeah. What were you wanting to comment on? Inkbrit?
Everything there, but yeah, Ink Brick by John Hankiewicz and various, with cover art by Paul K. Tunis. And the question that it asks right away: what is comics poetry? A new generation of cartoonists is answering just that and pushing comics' expressive potential. In the process, Inkbrick is a biannual journal showcasing the best of the hybrid form, and the debut issue features full-color work from 8 creators. So that looks interesting, and I would mention too that is on special at DCB Service this month. So it's 45% off. So instead of $8, it's $4.40, which is actually a pretty good deal on that.
Definitely check it out. I wonder which press, because I know it's listed under Alternative Comics, but they have that co-op now.
Right.
So I don't know if this is an Alternative Comics title or if it's Revival House, Hick and Hock. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that Irene, which is solicited right next to it, is a Hick and Hock title.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting about this is that Irene Volume 5 has been solicited previously. It came out last year, and I know for a fact that issue number 6 of Irene has just recently come out because I spoke with both Dakota McFadzean and Andy Warner at SPX a couple of weeks ago, and they gave me the latest issue of Irene. So it's out. Maybe this is just double dipping because I'm almost positive that issue number 5 or volume 5 has been solicited previously in previews.
Oh.
But it's definitely an anthology worth checking out. And so it's interesting that both Inkbrit and Irene are anthologies, but they're doing different things. You and I have mentioned a few times on the Comics Alternative how we don't have as many anthologies as we used to in comics. I mean, I think that they're out there, but if you want to find them, you have to dig deep. And by digging deep, I'm talking about these very smaller micro presses. Mm-hmm. Because the larger comics publishers aren't doing them much at all. You don't see that much coming out from, let's say, Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly. Once in a blue moon, DC will, DC or DC Vertigo will come out with some kind of anthology, like for instance Time Warp. Okay, but that's harkening back to their older catalog or taking that as inspiration. We just don't see as many comics anthologies, and so it's great to see things like Ink, Brick, and Irene.
Yep.
Filling in those gaps. Yes.
And that's the way too. I feel like I get exposed to some newer creators that I may not have caught otherwise.
Right. So, anything else on that page? I know there's one other Alternative Comics title.
Yeah, there's Sam Henderson's Magic Whistle Volume 3, Number 1. So, I'll be checking that out as well.
Yeah. And I like Sam Henderson, but I don't know if I'll get this though.
Mm-hmm. And then I jumped to Booms on 276. So if you have anything before then, go ahead.
Okay, on page 260, under Big Planet Retrofit Comics, is a title that I haven't seen yet, and that is Butter and Blood. It's a graphic novel by Stephen Weissman. And I say something I haven't seen yet because, a few months back you and I did the Publisher Spotlight on Big Planet Retrofit, and in the months since, we've been noticing some of the books that we had discussed or we were sent copies of had been solicited This one, though, we didn't get a copy of, so I guess this is...
Have you checked your mail recently?
No, I haven't.
Well, I got one today.
Hey, all right.
Got a nice package from Retrofit today.
Wow. Box, Jared, thank you, guys. A very heartfelt thank you. We love you.
Yes. So we got Butter and Blood, and we got quite a few other things that may end up being in future previews.
Wow.
But that's the biggest thing.
Right. So now our listeners are thinking, okay, the only reason why you guys do this podcast is to get those kind of free comics.
You know, at first that may have been the case, but now I'd like to get rid of some of the stuff. Now when the free comics come, I feel like it's more of a burden, but not when it is from Retrofit. So
they do a lot of really good stuff.
Yes, and so I go to 276 to the Boom section. Do you have anything other than in between there?
Nope, I go to the same place you do.
Okay, and so the one comic that stood out to me under Boom was Snowblind #1, written by Ollie Masters and illustrated by Tyler Jenkins. Ollie Masters had previously done The Kitchen for Vertigo, and I really liked that series, and so I'm definitely wanting to check this out. And the sample art from Tyler Jenkins looks really, really nice, almost like I guess a kind of watercolor wash to it as well. The pages we get don't have dialogue on them, but we do see the art, and it looks good. And the description says is basically that a young high school teen named Teddy lives in Alaska and discovers that his family is in the witness protection program, and he did not know that. And so that is that sounds like an interesting, again, another noir crime story and Masters did really well with that milieu in The Kitchen.
Mm-hmm. And in the solicit, they also mention that it's in the tradition of Criminal, Scout, and 100 Bullets. And so, if you want to win me over, those are three of the big titles in that genre you should mention. So they have me.
I mean, but they might as well say in the spirit of in the spirit and tradition of other crime comics. Those are just three. Those are just three crime comics, right? I mean, that's what they have in common, other than that they're also all good.
Yeah. So yeah, I have that one marked.
I don't have anything else in Boom, so if you do, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to point out on page 285 that the collected hardcover of Jorge Corona's Feathers is solicited. And now Andy Wolverton and I talked about issue #1 of Feathers several months ago, a good number of months ago now. Have you read any of Feathers?
No.
It's a really good story, and I highly recommend it. And it's nice to see that this is coming out not only collected, but in a collected hardbound edition. So it's a Boom Archaea release. They make really good books, good quality, good binding. So if you didn't get or keep up with the issues of Feathers, then now's your chance to get the hardbound volume.
Good.
I next go to page 298.
Okay, I have something on 297 really quick.
Sure.
Under Comic Mix, Comic Mix is doing... Well, Comic Mix is run partially by Mike Gold, who is a former was a former editor at not just DC Comics, but at First Comics, and so they handle a lot of the former First properties. So they're doing yet again another John Sable freelance omnibus by Mike Grell, the third of 4. That's on page 296. But on page 297 is a collection of another First series, Whisper by Stephen Grant and Norm Brayfogle. This is collecting issues 3 through 11 of Whisper, but it is titled The Whisper Campaign because it is a fundraiser for Norm Brayfogle, who unfortunately suffered a stroke almost a year ago, about 8 or 9 months ago. And this will be the purchase of this book, which runs $50 for the soft cover and $100 for a hardcover with a David Finch cover, is going to benefit his medical expenses. And this is important not just because Norm Brayfogle is a significant creator in recent comics history, but that this was his first professional art gig on Whisper. And in this collection, you also get a brand new Grimjack story by John Ostrander and Tim Truman. So yet another First comic being included in that.
And I'm glad you pointed out that the proceeds of this will go to Brayfogle, because, someone without that context will look at both the soft cover and the hardbound prices and just be, I think, completely turned off.
Yep.
Without the context.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Comics Mix has been doing this. I think it was last month that they had that collection for Grimjack that they solicited, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So if we turn the page to 298, this is a title, Burnt Comics with an X, number 1, from a publisher, Creature, that I'm not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So did you know about Creature, or had you heard about it?
No. No, this Burnt Comics number 1 it says a dog chooses to commit suicide and tries to find a creative way to die. Along the way, he encounters obstacles which will further nurture his existential crisis. Wow. Okay. That sounds great, and so it sounds like it's a really dark comedy. And this is one that's also on special at DCB Service this month. So even at $3.99, it's already a pretty good price for a independent comic. But you can get it for an even better deal.
Yeah. Well, the solicit that you just read reminded me of what we used to find, let's say, in the underground comics movement or in the early alternative comics. And so the fact that this is titled Burnt Comics, C-O-M-I-X, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to check this out, especially with a discount.
Yeah.
Now, I really did want to mention in the Dynamite section the title on page 301, because I know how much you love steampunk. And I know that you're a big fan of Frank Barberi. So, right there, it's a marriage made in heaven, right?
Yeah, that when I saw that, I looked at said, "Oh, Frank Barberi, that's I like his work." And then it's steampunk, and so it's like, It's again another one of those Reese's peanut butter sandwiches, but instead of peanut butter, it's dog shit.
Okay, I think we have the subtitle for this episode.
But in Dynamite, on the next page, is a comic that I'm really curious about, which is Seduction of the Innocent #1, a 4-issue miniseries written by Andy Parks and drawn by Esteva Poles. And I've liked some of Andy Parks's previous work. I've read a little bit of his Lone Ranger, but Capote in Kansas is a really good graphic novel. And this takes place in San Francisco in 1953, and I guess he gets involved. A detective, a new FBI agent named Tom Jennings, gets involved in some grisly murders, and it is compared to James Ellroy, Jim Thompson, and EC era crime and horror comics. So that's gonna be interesting. So, and it says horrific tales of true crime in the Dynamite tradition. I don't know if this is actually going to be true crime in really true crime, or more the fact that like the original Crime Does Not Pay comics claim to be true stories.
Well, yeah. Well, you can tell from the cover of issue number 1. Yeah, you can tell from this cover that they're going for that EC Comics look, right?
Right.
And so this the layout and even the Dynamite Entertainment symbol looks a lot like the EC symbol,
Mm-hmm.
And in the upper right-hand or left-hand side of the cover, you have the word crime, which is a label, something like you would find with an EC comic. And of course, the visual angle, the kind of fonts that look crime laden, and then the horrific tales of true crime is right there with those kind of comics from the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, and someone holding an axe and
in a head
is calling back to the classic Johnny Craig cover.
Yeah, that infamous cover.
Yeah. So yeah, that I'm going to check out, and I think. And then the one other thing in Dynamite I had, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of you here, but there is Dynamite is putting out a new Shaft novel called
That's on
Shaft's
page
311. Page 311, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, by David Walker, who wrote the Shaft comic.
So this is going to be prose.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Huh. Well, the only other thing in Dynamite I have is right under that, and that is Peter Milligan's Terminal Hero is being collected.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we reviewed that first issue of Terminal Hero. We both really liked it. I kind of lost my way. I didn't read the rest of the series, but for some reason, it just seems like this collection should have come out earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, because that seems to have been out for a while.
Yeah. I go next to page 325.
Okay, so quickly, I have something on
that?
316. What was it? Oh, yeah. Kind of just to keep in the spirit of the first comics stuff, Devil's Due First Comics is putting out a reprint of an actual first comic, the 30th anniversary of Warp by Peter Gillis and Frank Brunner. This collects. It doesn't. It collects the first 9 issues of the series, which were the ones that adapted the original plays upon which the comic series was based. And I've always been curious about those plays because the comic was a great sci-fi space opera epic, and I always was curious as to what those looked like when performed on the stage back in the 70s. But anyway, this is collecting those issues. So yet another First Comics classic coming into print. And then I had something on 324 that I wanted to mention quickly, which was no, that can't be 320. Can't be 324. 325. We've mentioned before that Dover Publications seems to be putting out a lot of classic graphic novels from the 80s, and this is no exception. Last of the Dragons written by Carl Potts and Denny O'Neil and drawn by Terry Austin and Carl Potts, is reprinting what was originally a Marvel graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it originally published as a 6-part miniseries in Epic Illustrated. So I remember that when that originally came out. It's got some really, really cool stylistic art. So it's interesting that Dover is continuing to do those efforts, because they're putting out a lot of stuff that is pretty obscure but deserves to be in print.
Right.
Okay, so you had 325.
Actually, that's probably the more interesting thing on 325. I had mentioned it because that was the Drawn Quarterly place where it starts. But, I have to say, the one new book that they have, the Pippi Longstockings, The Strongest in the World book,
They've been doing a good job of
maybe
printing
if I read
that
it,
stuff.
I'll find it more engaging, but...
Sure.
Yeah. And, of course, they're resoliciting all the Moomin.
Mm-hmm. Which I think might be one of their cash cows right now.
Yeah. That would make sense. And they had those at the Drawn Quarterly table at SPX. But that's all that I wanted to mention.
Yep. And then Fantagraphics has... that's where I go next. Do you have anything before that?
What page?
Page 332.
332.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. For some reason I overlooked that, but I didn't dog ear the page. Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
Yes.
I think last month in Fantagraphics there wasn't as much.
Right.
This month, it more than makes up.
Yes. Because we have the resolicit of Love and Rocket's New Stories Volume 8. So
yeah,
we get to see that come back.
And the resolicit of Maria M. Book 2.
Yes. So some Hernandez Brothers sweetness. And then I'm also looking at Richard Sala's Violenzia and Other Deadly Amusements, and The Life and Legend of Wallace Wood, edited by Bob Stewart. So there's several things in Fantagraphics this month that I'm going to probably grab.
Yeah. And, it's been a while since Sala came out with anything. At least maybe 3 years. Am I forgetting something?
Yeah, I don't know.
So, yeah, I like that. And then this work by Stewart, The Life and Legend of Wallace Wood, is, Fantagraphics has been doing a really good job with their books focused on, classic creators. Because it wasn't that long ago that they had the Harvey Kurtzman book.
Right.
So, as usual, great stuff coming from Fantagraphics. What do you have after Fantagraphics?
I go to First Second, which is on page 338.
Okay.
And they've now The Divine by Bose Levy, Asif Hanukkah, and Tomer Hanukkah. Is this a resolicit? Or
yeah.
I mean, this has already been out, right?
It's already been out. In fact, when I saw this solicit the other day, I went to Amazon just to check the release date for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to make sure that my memory was not faulty,
right? Because
I know I've had a copy of The Divine for a while now, but I also wanted to check the pub date because just last week we published a review of The Divine on our blog, and so I thought, well, maybe they did delay the publication, and I mean, it's okay to put up the review when we did, but it was back in July, I think it was, June or July. So I'm wondering why this is being resolicited.
Yeah.
Except,
I guess it's just to offer it again,
Yeah, this seems to be the only second title in this month's catalog, so maybe they felt that they had to put some presence in, so why not The Divine?
Yep. And I'm done actually with the catalog now. I don't have anything else, so it's all you for the rest of the show.
The smooth sound of Derek in previews.
That should be the title of the episode.
I don't know how smooth it'll be, but okay. On 346, there is the first collection of Grant Morrison's 18 Days. This is from Graphic India. You know, several months ago they made a big deal about this coming out, and I've been interested in it, but I haven't read any of it. Mm-hmm. But for those who didn't get the individual issues, now you can, and you waited for the trade, now the time has come. So pony up. The first volume, War Begins, is being solicited.
Yep.
Something I'm even more excited about, just because the solicit sounds interesting, is on the following page. This is 348. Humanoids, we don't talk about humanoids much on the show, and they do some really good stuff. And I think for me at least, with humanoids, many times when I'm going through the catalog initially, I may glance over humanoids and not give it the close reading that it deserves. And then later on, when I'm doing my own orders, I pay a little closer attention to it. But this time around, and I think it was the cover of this book that got me. And again, this is on page 348. It's called Different Ugliness, Different Madness by Mark Males. And the cover looks interesting, but then I read the solicit and it seems even more interesting. It says, America, 1930, the golden age of radio. A stunningly beautiful woman, Helen, travels aimlessly across the United States, taking the first train that comes without knowing the destination. Her path crosses that of the reclusive Lloyd Goodman, better known as the attractive and sexy voice of the playboy of radio. But he has a secret. His voice is as dazzling as his face is repulsive. Lloyd, embarrassed by his appearance, disappears from the limelight. As Helen struggles with the terrible memories of a personal trauma, her meeting with Lloyd will change their lives forever. So it seems to have a great premise.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that picture of the cover, if that is supposed to be what we're to guess that Lloyd looks like.
I don't know, but he doesn't look repulsive to me.
He doesn't look repulsive, but he looks like there may be a little, like, I don't know, Rondo Hatton, acromegaly situation maybe going on with the character. I don't know.
But that's something that I'm definitely going to check out. So Humanoids has a lot of good stuff, and some of the stuff that they put out is a little more fantastically based, which is fine. This is different in that it's much more of a realistic narrative, at least according to the solicit.
That's true.
Yeah. So there's that. On the following page, 350, I want to mention that there is a new printing of Benjamin Reed and Chris Wildgoose's Porcelain, a Gothic Fairy Tale, and this is a book that came out maybe a little more than 2 years ago, and I remember being interested in it, and I didn't do anything about it. But now this new printing is out, and it may be worth checking out.
Yeah, is that from Improper Books?
Yes, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is Benjamin Reed's publishing arm.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the other titles solicited under there, there's Briar Volume 1. He's the writer on that. And then there's Night Post, the graphic novel. He's the writer on that as well. And he's even sent us emails a few times. And so seems like a really nice guy. So there's that. And I don't have much more, I don't think. There is on page 358... a one-shot, Prometheus Eternal, from Locust Moon Press. And, Locust Moon is the bookshop that has started to, over the past couple of years or so, publish their own comics, just like Kilgore Books and Comics has done. And I'm really fascinated by that publishing phenomena. Bookstores that then go on to publish their own stuff, whether it be comics or prose or what have you. And this is one. And I was talking with, and I can't remember his name, at SPX. I have his card right next to me, but I'm not going to go digging in and looking for it. But he was talking about this, and so this may be something worth checking out. In fact, I can imagine in the future us doing a publisher spotlight on Locust Moon.
That's possible, though. They only put out a handful of things here and there, right? They've got that and the Little Nemo, Dream Another Dream, which is a massive book that I don't know if we'll be reviewing. But this one looks interesting because it's $6 for one thing, 24 pages, and it's a bunch of different really top quality creators: Grant Morrison, Paul Pope, Dave McKean, Bill Sienkiewicz, Farrell Dalrymple, Yuko Shimizu, David Mack, all with their interpretations of the Prometheus myth.
Right.
So when I first saw this, I was, is this going to be that? It's going to be about that crappy Alien prequel movie that Ridley Scott did, but no, it's not. It's about the actual Prometheus, and it's a collaboration between the Philadelphia Museum of Art and Locust Moon.
Right.
So it looks like it's going to be a nice art book.
Yes, and also, you mentioned that this is kind of a take or an adaptation of the Prometheus myth. Locust Moon Press does a lot of adaptations. Their Little Nemo, Dream Another Dream harkens back to, of course, Little Nemo in Slumberland. But they've also done other collections like fairy tales, and so they're doing that. And also, I was told by the individual whose name escapes me right now at SPX that they are starting to publish more stuff and they have more planned, and that's why he thought that maybe we would be interested in doing a publisher's spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially if they send us copies of Little Nemo, Dream Another Dream, which I'm sure they won't.
Yeah,
that's a hefty book.
Yeah, I don't even want it.
Yeah, that could kill a man.
Yes, I don't have room for it.
Yeah,
they can hang on to that, save some money. I mean, I'm sure it's a beautiful book. Don't know where that's going to go.
Yeah. I know where that's going to go. That's going to. Yeah, it's going to go, next to Sunday Press Books and IDW Artist Editions.
Yeah.
Which I still don't know where those are going to go.
Yep.
Okay, in brief, on 396, the third volume of Oliver Bouquet's Snowpiercer is coming out, so that is good. I think it's been a while since that last volume.
But did you read those? Did you read those?
The first. Not the second one.
Yeah, so the first one is a standalone, book originally created by different creators than this, because I think the original creator passed away. I can't remember his name. And Snowpiercer on its own is a great book. It's also a great movie. The movie takes a lot of liberties with the book, but it's a great movie. But the premise being that there is this train that is on a nonstop loop around the world, and all the survivors of the Earth are on it. Well, the second book takes place on a different train, and so we find out that there is another train that also has survivors on it. And I honestly could not get through that book.
Oh.
So I didn't mark Snowpiercer Book 3 because I was so disappointed with Snowpiercer Book 2, and I thought, they're gonna milk this once again? But Snowpiercer, the original Snowpiercer graphic novel, is fantastic and a really good, standalone story. It never needed a sequel.
Wow. Yeah. That's unfortunate about the sequel thing. But now, didn't that first volume from Titan come out about the same time as the film? Well, or maybe right before.
They released those first two books out pretty quickly, one on top of each other, and they're translations of comics that have been around for a while in France.
Right, but the film release. Titan released those in English around the same time as the film release, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're not necessarily on board for Snowpiercer 3.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't like to be negative, but man, I just felt like that was milking a cash cow.
Yeah. On page 418, this is in the Viz Media section, volume number 7 of Assassination Classroom is being solicited. Now, I have to say, I have not read Assassination Classroom yet, but this is a title that maybe Shay and I are going to discuss in a future manga episode.
Great.
He's heard a lot of good things about it. He likes what he's seen, and I'm going by his suggestion.
That's interesting.
So I may just get this and discuss it.
That's interesting because I just ran across this at a bookstore the other day, and I normally don't stop in the manga section, but I was the cover of the series caught my eye because it looks a lot different from other manga series. So I took a look at it.
So did you look through this?
I didn't buy it, but I looked through it, and so I may check that out myself.
Yeah. Now, that's all I have in the comics section proper. There's one book in the book section on 436, but McFarlane put out earlier this year Grant Morrison in the Superhero Renaissance, Critical Essays, and I hadn't heard of this before, but apparently this came out over the summer. Did you know about this?
No, I didn't know about that, and so that's coming out from McFarlane, who does a lot of that.
McFarlane.
Yeah, does a lot of this sort of thing.
And they do that, and McFarlane comes out with a lot of books dealing with not just comics but pop culture. I mean, that's their forte. I think some are hit or miss, maybe miss, but this looks interesting, and it just makes sense that you'd have a collection based on Morrison, and I'm assuming based on primarily his superhero work. Although the title itself and the Superhero Renaissance, and from the solicit, it makes it sound as if he played a leading role. I mean, obviously he played a significant role in the way we look at superheroes now, but it's a provocative title, let's just say.
Yeah, and since we're on that page, I'd mention they're soliciting Jose Alanis's Death, Disability, and the Superhero, which has been out for a while, and is a really groundbreaking work in comic studies, merging disability studies with comic studies.
Now, was that Mississippi?
I can't remember if it's Mississippi. Mississippi does solicit their books in previews, so it could very well be, but I don't have a copy of that book with me right now, so I can't remember what press it is.
Yeah, but with the book solicits, I know that often things are late, so many of these titles that I've noticed will have been out for months, and then we'll see the solicit.
Yeah. And so I hope they get some, that the academic presses actually get some crossover sales from soliciting in in previews. I guess
so. That'd be great.
Yeah, it might be that it's the paperback that's new
for the disability book.
Yeah, because according to Amazon, that was just released last month.
Okay, well that would make sense.
And it is Mississippi.
Okay. So there you go, the October previews catalog. Andy and I went through with our wish list, our highlights, and so we'd like to hear what you think of the various titles that we pointed out, and maybe if we missed anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, Andy, there's a place where you can get all the titles that we discussed and at significant discounts. You know where that is?
Is it Discount Comic Book Service?
Yes, Discount Comic Book Service. If you go to their website, dcbservice.com, you're going to find some unbelievable specials. And for the month of October, the titles that we have been discussing, you're going to find deep, deep discounts. So go to the website DCB Service. You will not be disappointed. And after you do get your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know the things that you're going to be reading. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find on the right-hand side of your browser window a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can record a message to us through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's very simple and easy to use. Or if you want to be more difficult about it, you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right, or you can get a hold of us by email. We are 2guys@comicsalternative.com, or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And then we also have our Twitter feed where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to the blog. You can check out our Twitter feed at the number 2 Guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, and on Pinterest. We even have a YouTube channel, so if you like to listen to your media that way, well, you can find us there as well. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can also stream us on Stitcher, and you can find us on TuneIn. And of course, you can find every single one of our episodes as well as our growing list of reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog. And that's at the website, comicsalternative.com.
All right, all the ways to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing.
And we do like to hear from you. So get in touch. Let us know what you're reading and what you think about the podcast.
That's right.
Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.